Hello, Internet, and I come to you from my car, and the fact it is extremely hot. So, yeah. Today we are going to be reading more of I'd Rather Have a Cat Than a Harem. There we go. It is written by Kuzuzu Kabato, and our artist is Hinano Chano. Look at the pretty art. This boy has an owl. Still haven't quite identified him, but this is our protagonist, and this is her favorite cat at the moment. And we are starting on chapter 3, Time for Tea, because it has been a minute since I've read anything, and I figured I have an hour-long lunch. Might as well read something. Also, I currently work outside all damn day, so I am passing out the moment I get home. Like, I get home, take a shower, pass out. So go ahead, grab water, Gatorade, tea, coffee, whatever it is you want to drink. We're going forward. Amy sighed. Tigger, pray that somehow I'll get through this in one piece. And please be here to comfort me when I get back. Amy, Isabella chided, the only way this will end is with you going to meet him in person. So let's just go and get this over with. Since first meeting Alexander, Amy's days had passed without further incident. Tigger had finally been welcomed into the Northland family home, and now the day had finally arrived where the engagement candidates were scheduled to meet the third prince. Nothing commendable could be said about Amy's unwillingness to go, despite receiving an invitation from the royal palace itself, nor the way Isabella spoke about it so flippantly. The Northland family, however, had been completely backward in their attitudes towards this engagement from the very beginning. The servants were all aware of this, so they were totally unfazed by the current conversation. Today would be the first time Amy entered the royal palace. She knew how much of an honor it was to be allowed to do so before debuting in society. She could tell just from the outer walls that the elegant castle was almost certainly breathtaking and magnificent on the inside. She wondered how much more excited she would be if she were visiting for just a tour instead. The real reason that sighs kept escaping Amy's lips was because she was still worried about her game theory. Even if this world was not exactly the same as the Otome game she used to play in her previous life, it was at the very least incredibly similar. There were living doppelgangers of characters from the game's opening screen everywhere, from the portrait of the third prince to her older brother Harold, and even Alexander, the son of the Duchess who had given her Tigger. She had had several opportunities to speak with Alexander after their initial encounter, and each meeting had only further fueled her suspicions. The artist had been quite skilled at capturing the personalities of each character in illustration. Under any circumstances, Amy would simply be in awe of the artist's talent. She very reluctantly stopped petting Tigger's carefully brushed, fluffy fur, and Tigger looked back with sad eyes and gave her a heartbreaking meow, making it hard for her to leave again. She clung to him with one last hug and buried herself in his fluff, feeling totally comfortable like she had been bundled up in the world's best blanket. She had been so nervous the night before that she had a lot of trouble getting to sleep. Against Tigger's soft fur and warm body, Amy nearly drifted back to sleep before she was pulled away by Isabel. "Aw, Tigger, my blanket," she mumbled. "You'll stand out if you're late, you know," Isabel warned. "Okay, I'm going. Let's go. Right away." Amy reluctantly heaved herself off the bed. Nothing was more dreadful to Amy than the prospect of getting noticed. Still love that the scenes are set apart with these cute little kitty paws. That's absolutely adorable. They finally arrived at the inner garden of the palace, just barely on time. Amy and Isabel must have been the last to arrive as the gates were quietly shut behind them. As a dreadful feeling came over Amy at the rattling sound of the locks being fastened, she heard her mother's carefree voice. Wow, would you look at that? A fountain! Huh? Oh, there is one. Oh, Amy, you don't have to be all doom and gloom. It's a garden party. All you have to do is say a few words to the prince and then pass the baton to the next lady. Look, we have beautiful flowers to enjoy, and we'll be able to drink some delicious tea too. Will there be cake? Yep, and it will be full of cream. As Amy lifted her head, giving a smiling seal of approval for her mother's plan, she saw that it was just as her mother had said. The flowers were gorgeous, in the fullness of bloom. A thin stream of water flowed through the garden, gently winding like a natural brook, eventually connecting with a fountain surrounded by white stone. The Northland family had a decent garden as well, and their land even included a forest. No part of the garden, however, was as exquisitely maintained as this one. Emma was generally impressed and captivated. She had never really been interested in plants or gardens in her previous life, but in this world, there were so few other amusements to entertain herself with. She was developing an eye for natural beauty. It's beautiful, don't you think, Mom? It's a good thing we came, if for no other reason than to see this. We wouldn't normally be allowed here. As they were guided through the garden at a leisurely pace by a maid, Amy was able to admire the park, the beautiful flowers, the verdure, and the soothing sounds of the fountain with rapt attention. Around 10 other groups of parents. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Around 10 other groups of parents and children had already arrived. Many of the assembled ladies were close in age to the 13-year-old prince, but several others, including Amy, were younger. Amy watched them at the tables arranged throughout the expansive garden as they enjoyed themselves drinking tea or appreciating the flowers. The premise of the event was that the queen had invited several ladies over for tea. But, so the official story would go, the queen would suddenly become ill, so the third prince would appear in her stead to entertain the guests other than the ladies who had been invited and their parents. The only other people in the garden were the royal maids and the knights on guard duty. Amy was a little relieved that the prince had not shown up yet. Amy and Isabel approached a table chosen at her mother's recommendation, which was close to the building but far enough away from the entrance that they could relax with a view of the entire garden. As Amy sat down, her chair with carriole legs as delicate as handmade lace made a creaking noise, but instead of feeling the urge to run away in embarrassment at the tangible reminder of her weight, she was filled with a sense of security. Since the day she set her mind to it, she had steadily gained weight and was now an undeniably chubby girl. Amy was not unhealthy, but to the young aristocratic ladies who believed that one's outward appearance was the most important thing in life, and that a fragile, rail-thin frame was fashionable, her body shape was unthinkable. The knight and a maid who had shown Amy around had widened their eyes in surprise when they first saw her, but as members of the royal staff, they were, of course, professionals. After the brief moment, they quietly returned to their work as if nothing had happened. As a show of respect for their wonderful poker faces, she smiled from ear to ear and thanked them for their discretion. Amy looked around, and as she expected, every other lady attending the party was slender. Their dresses were even designed to show off their figures, with many of them wearing princess-line dresses to expressly accentuate their small waistlines. Amy's dress was in the Empire line style, where the dress loosely cinched around under her bust and then softly extended down to her ankles. Although her waist was hidden, anyone could imagine her chubby shape from her collarbone. So insinuated, insulated, it barely even poked out her chubby upper arms, visible under transparent lace sleeves, and her squishy, pinchable cheeks. Because of this, even the ladies all over the garden saw Amy for the first time. Their gazes had passed over her, looking relieved. Between the ladies vibing for the position of princess consort, shooting sparks from their eyes at each other, and the palpable tension of their parents trying to keep them in check, it was clear that Amy was not seen as the legitimate rival at all. No one's paying any attention to me, Isabel laughed. Aren't you relieved? Yeah, there's no way I'd get chosen in this group. Confident now, Amy gave a small fist pump of success under the table. With the assurance she got from being so completely ignored, she was able to leisurely enjoy her tea. She resolved to make the best of the day. After all, she would appreciate the elegant scenery from the back of the garden, feel the refreshing breeze flow through her hair, and have her feel of a romantic tease. Yeah, and fruit tarts jam-packed with cream. This is so yummy, she squealed. You're so cute when you eat, Isabel said with a laugh. Little did the mother and daughter duo from the Northland family know that, giggling and reveling in each other's company, they were standing out for a completely different reason. The two of them, carefree and careless, were totally unaware. A short while passed. They had just finished drinking their first cup of tea when it was officially reported to the party that the Queen was unable to come out due to a sudden illness. As soon as our royal clerk announced that the third prince, His Royal Highness Edward Leo Ludicia, would be arriving in her stead, the atmosphere in the garden became even more electrified. Amy was astonished at the sun-shifted moon. Like a dozen lions were awaiting the appearance of a lamb with bated breath. It's a little scary. I can't wait to go home and pet Tigger, Amy complained wistfully. Just a few hours left, dear. Hang in there. As they whispered to each other, loud cheers erupted in the distance. It seemed the third prince had made his entrance. Everyone rushed to the area at once and formed an impenetrable wall of screaming girls, but Amy didn't move from her seat. She stayed put partly because they had been told he would address everyone at least once. So in an effort to avoid a chaotic crowd, the ladies didn't need to come up and introduce themselves to him, but also Amy wasn't sure getting in the middle of a crowd was a good idea. But still, she wondered if he looked like that Otome game character in real life, like his portrait did. She outright refused to become his fiancé, but she was still curious. She had come this far, after all. She straightened her back just a fraction and glanced his way. She couldn't make out his face so far away and behind all those people, but she could tell he had inherited the king's tall stature, his dark blonde hair peeking through the gap in the crowd of ladies surrounding him, and it briefly flashed, catching in the sunlight. Wow, what a pretty color, isn't it? It's nearly the same hair color the former king's younger brother had. Blue on its back and yellow on its sides. Is it a red flank blue tail? What? It had not been the prince that caught Amy's eye after all. It was a little bird that had perched on the branch of a nearby tree. The maid from the royal palace, who had been standing at attention nearby, jerked forward ever so slightly in surprise. But this too went unnoticed. Amy's eyes shone as she watched the bird. Yes, I believe it is, said Isabel, turning her attention from the prince to the little bird. They're usually so wary they hardly ever come out in front of people. It probably feels safe because weasels can't get in here. In their previous life, red flanked bluetails were known as bluebirds of happiness and could be spotted even in Tokyo. Amy never did get the chance to see one then. She didn't know if it was the same bird in this world, but the bright blue feathers were still beautiful. She still stared at the little bird, trying to commit every detail of it to her memory so she could try to draw it when she got home. Maybe today wasn't so bad after all. A beautiful garden, delicious tea, and a rare little bird made for a pretty good day, Amy thought. Feeling like the tea party was already over, she listened to the faint sound of the wings flapping, watched the bluebird fly off into the sky, and let out a contented sigh. Is something on your mind? Huh? She had been absent-mindedly watching the bird leaving when the voice suddenly shook her out of her reverie. Sitting slightly diagonal from her, Isabel froze in surprise, teacup suspended halfway to her mouth. Although a terrible feeling came over Amy, she still hurried to stand up and greet the prince, but he politely waved away the gesture. Good afternoon. May I sit down? And this is our image. So this is our prince. I think he's the guy on the cover. And consider they mention a bird. But the bird on the cover is an owl, so who knows? But look at her, so cute. Her outfit's adorable. Nice. Very lovely image. Girl just wanted to watch the bird. Yes, of course. If you please. Hello. He had silky dark blonde hair, a handsome, symmetrical face, and bright gray, nearly silver eyes. He was accompanied by two knights guarding him and one elderly maid. The prince sat on a chair pulled out for him by one of the knights. He was the spitting image of the portrait Amy had been shown before. For some strange reason, that outrageously gorgeous face was smiling at her. She vaguely felt like there were high-pitched voices squealing from afar away. But her head was too full of questions to really notice. Why is he over here? Wouldn't he normally start talking to the person closest to him or go by family rank or something? I can't get over how much he looks just like that picture. Unlike Isabel, who recovered herself at once and was smiling normally, Amy could not stop blinking over and over. Forgive us for the intrusion, the elderly maid whispered to Amy, taking pity on her clear inability to grasp the situation. For safety's sake, we had to suddenly change our plans and decided that the prince would converse with each seated group one at a time. You happen to be the only young lady sitting at the time, so you will be the first. Amy quickly looked around and saw that everyone had started rushing over to the tables. Oh, I see. All right. Now that she mentioned it, Amy thought it made sense. It would have been difficult to guard the prince in that crowd, and it would have been a huge problem if one of the ladies were pushed, fell over, and got hurt. She was very relieved to hear this was why he came over to her first. Edward continued his previous line of questioning. It looked like you were watching something. Um, um, there was a pretty little bird. A sweet bird with blue feathers was perched on a branch on that tree there. Amy pointed to the branch, which was covered with bright green leaves. Edward gave a small smile to her and answered and continued in a soft voice. Do you like birds? Yes. Other animals too. So do you like dogs then? Yes, dogs and cats. And cats. I love all animals. She was saved by her favorite subject, even if she wasn't confident interacting with other people, especially the opposite sex. She wasn't averse to talking about animals. Quite the contrary, it was one of her favorite things to do. And it seemed like the prince had similar interest. He actually broke into a smile when he started talking about his dog. Although they were both adolescents, equal in sense that they both had not debuted in society, Amy's speech and manner were actually incredibly informal for an audience with someone from the royal family. But she had a reason for this. Today's tea party was expressly prepared to see firsthand whether the candidates had the right temperament to be with the prince. That was why they had been given clear instructions to behave naturally, without worrying about etiquette and appearance more than necessary. However, even if that was the official statement, Amy knew they could always be punished for disrespect if they behaved too casually. Amy had been unable to shake the villainous's bad ending out of her mind. She didn't want to get on the good or bad side of the royal family. Fretting over it, she had asked her parents for advice. They just told her that it didn't matter if she acted casually around him, just as the instructions said. The most important thing, they continue, was that she behaved whichever way came most naturally to her. Her father pointed out that there really wasn't anything to worry about, because even in the unlikely event that they tried to change her with lese majesté, the crime of treason against royalty, there was no way she would face the punishments found in a bad ending. They wouldn't break up her family, they wouldn't execute her, because the current punishment for lese majesté included house arrest, fines, or more seriously, the stripping of one's noble rank, not executions. Even though the Northlands were nobles, losing that rank wouldn't cause great damage to them. Their land would probably be seized, but as long as the people living on the land were protected, it didn't really matter who was doing the job, her father had explained, laughing. Not to mention that he could get a technical job in the private sector wherever and whenever he wanted. Harold's dream of being... Oh, press the wrong button. Harold's dream of being an adventurer, too, was totally unaffected by his rank in society. And most importantly, they had been commoners originally in their past life. If they were stripped of their titles, they would just go back to being ordinary people. Hearing that they would be fine even if she provoked the prince's displeasure had Amy's heart swell with hope. Plus, if her informal attitude was deemed unsuitable for a princess consort, that might even help Amy's cause. If it became part of the reason they would remove her from the list of candidates, all the more reason to celebrate. I heard you adopted a cat from the Duchess of Coverdale. I did, Amy chirped. He's such a cutie. So it seems, replied the prince, amused. But he gets lonely so easily without me. I worry he's meowing out for me even as we speak. The bright smile that had emerged from her when she remembered Tigger immediately transformed into a sorrowful expression. It was as if she was saying she wanted the tea party to end right then so she could get home as soon as possible. But as she spoke sincerely, looking totally guiltless, the prince strangely couldn't detect any sarcasm in her desire to leave. Just as Amy's attention was about to be totally carried away by the lonesome Tigger, it finally dawned on her that the prince had known that she had become the adopted parent of one of the Duchess's cats. But how did you know about that? Is the royal palace notified whenever a cat gets adopted or something? No money was transferred from the Nolans to the Coverdales during Tigger's adoption. The Duchess kept a close watch on all her adoptions, so that no one would use the opportunity to send bribes to its family to foster political connections. I just want people who truly love cats, the Duchess would say occasionally, resentful. It's so upsetting when people take a cat they don't even want just to make me feel compelled to do something for them in return. Those poor cats deserve better. Amy looked uneasy, but Edward grinned and shook his head. No, nothing like that. Alexander Coverdale has been my friend since childhood. I heard it from him. Amy gasped. Seriously? Although she was surprised he was connected to another of the Otome game's love interests, Amy was brought back to reality and nodded, realizing that it made sense. Edward and Alexander were so close in age, they had probably been steadfast playmates. And if they met frequently, cat adoptions wouldn't be such a strange topic to come up in casual conversation. I've heard you met with Alec several times. Yes, when I would go to see Tigger, Tigger is the name of my cat. He would be there sometimes. She thought that Alexander, one of the suspected love interests of the games, would have negative feelings towards her. For perhaps as a result of their overly passionate first meeting, they became able to speak casually to each other. Even though he didn't play with the cats, he would sit beside Amy and occasionally offer her sweets. And because he always provided mouth-watering foods, she ended up accepting them. Yep, bribe a lady with food. That is a good way to get our love and affection. Drinking some zero sugar Gatorade flavored like fruit punch. Tigger was already used to Alexander, so he'd never run away from him either. As she spent her time petting the soft kitties and chatting to him, it was just like they were at a cat cafe. That eclair from last time was particularly wonderful. That thin, soft, flaky pastry shell filled with the perfect amount of smooth cream with a heavenly vanilla aroma. topped with chocolate. Amy had been reveling in reliving the dessert in her head, suddenly remembering there was a royal prince in front of her, and she tried to brush off her silence by clearing her throat. What would you two talk about? Cats, I imagine? Oh no, Alex seemed to just want to hear stories about my mother. The moment she called him Alec, an awkward beat passed between them, and Amy, whose mind had been halfway in the Duchess's cat room, didn't notice. Alexander wanted stories of the famous Harold. That was brother, not mother. I apologize. I misread that word. The famous Harold in exchange for his sweets. It looked like her brother and his dual blades had captured the hearts of his younger male classmates, too. Yes, Harold is a frequent topic of conversation at the royal palace as well. The Order of Knights and Order of Magicians are squabbling about who will win him over as soon as he graduates. Really? I've always just seen him as my ordinary, goofy older brother. Amy was surprised that Harold was so popular among such important people. Her mother seemed to have already heard about this, however, because her calm smile never wavered. Her brother's dual-wielding swordsmanship would certainly be accepted in the Order of Knights, just as his aerial combat magic would be in the Order of Magicians. Although these skills were simply a result of his passion for video games, that would be incomprehensible in a society like this where they were actually desired for a profession. Naturally, such skills didn't exist in her Otome game. Amy wanted to run with the train of thought and convince herself that this was just a world that resembled the game that was altogether different. But looking at the prince in front of her, the only thing she could think of was that opening screen. Of course, she wasn't out of the woods yet. She grabbed her upper arm as if hugging herself, fingers digging into her skin. I have to just get a little heavier. The springiness of her squeezed fingers into the armor that protected her from her fate. It was also the source of magical power that allowed her to put animals at ease and befriend them. Pardon me, what was that? Oh, nothing, Your Highness. Anyway, about the dog you have, Ed, huh? The prince smiled at Amy's puzzled look. She felt like she had a frog in her throat. It was the exact same smile tinged with loneliness from the game screen. You can call me Ed, not Your Highness. Sure, Ed. Wow. Although his expression didn't change, I have to watch and see how much time I have left on my break. Although his expression didn't change that much when she called him by his nickname, his bright gray eyes lit up joyfully, and Amy suddenly lost her train of thought. They continued to chat about animals until the old maid prompted him that it was almost time to move on. When he had finished with every table and didn't loop back around for round two, the tea party concluded without a hitch. Upon returning home, Amy headed straight to the room where Tigger would be. Just as she opened the door, Tigger rushed toward her with his tail raised as if he had been counting every second until her return. Amy plopped down with a thump and threw her arms around the cat to recharge. Tigger, I'm home. I'm so sorry. Were you terribly lonely? Oh, I'm so tired. It was exhausting, but he was easy to talk to. Almost surprisingly so. Amy figured it was because neither of them touched upon the subject of engagement at all. It was definitely disturbing seeing someone who looked exactly like that person from the illustration, but then they actually talked to one another. His gentle demeanor and polite way of speaking were exactly what one would expect of a prince. She hadn't been frightened at all. And at the end of the day, not only did he eagerly listen to her talk about Tigger, but he also seemed to enjoy talking about his own dog and horse. There's simply no room for animosity or hatred when animal lovers have a conversation. There was just one thing Amy was worried about. That smile. Although he was older than Amy, Edward was only 13. If they were in Amy's past life, he would be in junior high school. He should have been able to smile with fewer cares etched into his face. But the difference was like night and day when she compared Edward with the memories of her old male classmates from junior high. Even Alexander, who was a high-ranking aristocrat in his own right, didn't smile like that. When she wondered whether being in the royal family meant restricting one's authentic self that much, Amy felt a pang in her chest for him. I just don't get it. As Tigger meowed softly, he rubbed his head against her, nestling her. Amy guided his large 4 feet onto her lap. She filled the spaces between her fingers on both hands with his soft fur and then massaged the base of his ears. At the sight of his contented, happy expression and the feel of his soft fur, Amy felt her wound-up heart begin to relax. Tigger's mouth always looked like a smile when it was closed. Amy put her fingers at the corners of her mouth and lifted her own to match. Say, Tigger, it'd be nice if Ed was able to smile a little more naturally in front of the person he's going to marry. Don't you think? The person he's going to marry, in other words, not me. There were many beautiful people at the venue who were worthy of becoming a princess consort. He spent longer talking at other tables than he did with Amy, and his other conversations were animated too. You'll probably never talk to him again, Amy told herself. Although she was relieved at this, her heart grew slightly heavy for some reason. But that was okay. If she slept wrapped up in Tigger's fluff, she would definitely be back to normal by morning. Almost as soon as she finished that thought, there was a knock on her door and her mother appeared. Amy, I'll call right away for Mrs. Keller to come tomorrow. She'll take your measurements in the afternoon, okay? What? If I knew it was going to end up like this, I would have had us make riding dresses together before. I just thought we had more time until you needed one. Clueless, Amy hugged Tigger tightly on her lap. What are you talking about? Riding as in horseback riding? I mean, I like horses, but huh? What is it? With a startled face, she looked past the elegant black fur tickling her cheeks and saw her mother laughing. You were the one who promised to go to the castle riding grounds with His Highness. There was half a second of silence. What? You don't remember when you two were saying your goodbyes to one another? Amy desperately racked her brain trying to remember their last conversation. Unfortunately, it seems our time together is up, he said. You'll meet Ventus next time. And then Amy blurted out, okay, thank you very much for having me. Ventus. That was the name of the prince's horse. At the time, the only thing I had thought about was how grateful I was that it was all over. But Amy let out a surprised yelp, realizing that her casual response had actually been received as acknowledgement of their next meeting. And this is intermission. So we're going to end this here on this one because I only have 11 minutes left. But that was all of chapter 3 of I'd Rather Have a Cat Than a Harem, reincarnated into the world of a Otome game as a cat-loving villainess, by Kozu Kabato and art by Hinano Chano. That took 33 minutes. So thank you all for being here. Leave comments down below if there's anything specifically y'all want me to read in the future, all that good stuff. So yeah. Have a lovely day. Stay hydrated, all that good stuff. I'm still struggling to keep up with my bills, and I've been doing live streaming where I do art for people who donate and give me money so I can pay my bills. So thank you. I also have commissions available on Fiverr and Ko-fi. You can get my art on Redbubble. You can also check out some of the books I've written if you want to read some of the stuff I've written. I am currently working on a small collection of short stories that I will hopefully have published next year. I'm not sure. I'm still working on it. But yeah, have a lovely day. Stay hydrated. Thank you very much to my Patreon Ko-fi supporters, Diamond and Micah. You're all great. If you subscribe to my Patreon, you guys will get to see all my work early. And I'm going to be setting up polls so you guys can vote on which I'm going to be trying to make a desktop downloadable wallpaper, like little poster card art that you guys can vote on which one I work on, and you guys get to download the high resolution of that without the watermark that's on there. I've also been working on more Chow for Stream avatars, and you guys are going to get the vote on those too and see those early. So yeah, have a lovely day. Bye bye.